This CD is a tricky one, or at that, maybe just a daring one. The Tales series has time behind it and ongoing popularity, but to release a concert featuring music from throughout the series would prove difficult. Final Fantasy did it, and so did Monster Hunter and Zelda, and they did well even in their first attempt. But Tales isn't too well known for its music. There isn't really even a track that I would qualify as being iconic among even fans of the games. We're stepping into the realm of the unknown with the Tales Orchestra concert, but does this brave endeavor prove to be anything more than just that? Tales of Orchestra Concert celebrates 20 years of the Tales series, an RPG famous for real-time battles, conversations with characters, cooking, and convoluted backstories that only seem to make sense when you're actually playing it. Okay, Billy, you've really screwed it up your whole time here in English class, but I'll let you pass if you can describe one of the Tales games. Let's say, Tales of Guardia.
Okay, there are these 8 people who there's like a wind spirit, and they have to capture the wind spirit because she has like the Chamber of Time, but the Chamber of Time is powered by an alternate source known as the Hyper Magnus, which the Hyper Magnus controls people's souls and spirits, and it like goes into their veins, so people can't control whether or not they have that symptom or not. So they have to put it in a tank so that the wind spirit can like summon it, but she doesn't really know how without like the 8 guardian angels to like be able to support the Hyper Magnus, because they have like the keys. Like all 8 characters have a key which has a crest, but they can't unite them because each place where the key comes from a land where people are like against each other for like racist reasons. But someone has pointy ears and they don't like the people with the pointy ears, so they got to get the key somehow, and the only way they can get the key is by uniting the time and with but they can't do that because the wind spirit has multiple sides, and there's like a wind spirit in each land, and it's really weird. Just pass me. I don't want to take this course again.
Cheer up there, Billy. Mostly all of the games are different from one another in terms of setting, story, and so on, but they almost always involve a perilous journey ripe with battle. This CD features music from a large handful of them. First things first, let me just get this out of the way. Some people might not like me saying this, but Sori's theme is awful. It's the piece to open the concert, and if I were the average listener who gets bad impressions rather quickly, Sori's theme would conjure up a whole lot of, here we go. It's a vapid, terribly boring piece with a non-existent harmony. Nothing really meshes, and any exuberance it has going for it completely leaves by the time it repeats. It is dull and genuinely obnoxious at times. I don't like it. Things pick up with the second track, where the harmony is a lot smoother. The leading melody goes through a lot of variations and forms, visibly stretching out a pretty simple piece. I wasn't surprised to find out this was based on a pop song from the game. It's a good orchestration and does a good job of giving Fantasia due credit. If only I could say the same for later. The piece you heard in the beginning of this video was the first piece of the boss medley. It's an exciting piece of music that doesn't sacrifice the stoicism that propels it further. The effect achieved with seemingly elegant ease. The strings and percussion satisfyingly kick and weave through each other as the horns more moderately breathe its determined theme. Eventually segueing into some highly concentrated... okay, yeah. Get it, drum kit! There's that pesky drum kit again. So yeah, the drum kit hops in to add some energy, but soon as they ring, the medley divulges into rather mediocre fare. It doesn't really matter if stuff like this is played by an orchestra or a rock band. It's just not very interesting. Just to make sure for anyone who doesn't know, I don't mind a drum kit being used in an orchestra. I actually love it, and I'm quite fond of its implementation in translating video game music to a wider assortment of instruments. It seems to be most popular with video game orchestras because so many games' music feature a percussive beat as its accompaniment, primarily older games, 16-bit, 32-bit, and so on. I feel it's used to primarily great effect more times than not, but sometimes it feels like the drums are covering up for more of a piece's substance than it should. I don't think that's what's happening here per se, but it can at least feel like that. For example, when the medley reaches a transition from one piece to another, instead of having a clever moment where the orchestra overlaps or segues with a fancy cadenza or doing anything interesting, we get a quick bit of solo drumming instead, as if the orchestra just tumbled over and the drums are gathering its bearings as swiftly as possible. I'm making it sound clumsy. It's not, just shockingly tame. The drum kit is somewhere in that top 5 favorite instruments of mine, and its ability to rile up energy like nothing else is its most endearing trait, but like every instrument, it has its dangers, the biggest one being using it too much. Look up pieces with better use of the drum kit to see what I mean. Genova, and especially the Castlevania suite from the Play Symphony, are great examples. Again, not bad, the beginning is great, but I just don't feel as excited as I should be for such high-octane music. I get that it's a boss medley, so the rock-like feel of the piece is a inevitable, but that still doesn't make up for how quickly it runs dry. When a piece ends, or movie, or anything really, and you say to yourself, "That's the ending," it's never a very good sign. This piece just seems to end instead of gathering all its energy into something more satisfying. It's weird and almost funny to hear music like this end on such underwhelming note, especially when it's teasing that it's going to end in something much more gratifying near the very end, but okay. Now would probably be the best time to talk about Motoi Sakuraba, the composer where most of this music is coming from. There are other composers, but Motoi is pretty much the central one here. He's not really a renowned composer, not because he isn't talented, he just always seems to get himself wrapped up in scores with hours of music. Either that, or he just has a lot of projects going on at once. I mean, look at the guy, he never smiles once, he looks so crestfallen. And even when he's performing, it's like someone tore his heart out and never returned it. I feel like I gotta give him a hug or something. What's wrong with the guy? Somebody help him. Not every piece he writes, then, is going to be some masterpiece or cult hit among listeners, even if the music is from a venerable series, making it hard to find the music you need to pull off a concert with a scale such as this. I admire the guy's tireless experimentation in adrenaline, and he's a much more variable composer than some give him credit for, but at the end of the day, there's just so much here with the Tales series alone, and it's evident the people behind the curtain struggled to find the right pieces to play. That doesn't mean there isn't stuff there, just that they were going to have to search for it and potentially add some new stuff to the original arrangements in order to flesh them out as orchestral pieces worthy of a concert. They didn't really do that. At all. They kind of went for what was ever easiest to do, with some pieces that were already orchestrated and in full to begin with, medleys, vocal song pieces, and orchestrations of songs. What's more, having something like Starry Heavens to represent Tales of Symphonia is telling. They might have been worried about finding and transcribing certain pieces from such a large score into an orchestral format, so we got an orchestral translation of a song instead. And that kinda sucks. It wouldn't even bother me if what was on here made up for at least some of it. Unfortunately, much of what is on here baffled me. Trials, Shrine Medley, the other 10-minute piece on here, is less interesting than the boss medley. It's trying to differentiate itself from the rest of the soundtrack, trying to be weird and off-kilter with an acoustic guitar opening and strange operatic singing. But they leave and enter without any significant poignancy, and it goes on for too long. Then you got these two saps, the lullaby and royal capital majestic grandeur. Why are they even here? I thought I was being too hard on the first piece, but these two just don't belong. The lullaby is boring, a bit too sympathetic, and goes exactly where you think it will. Royal capital is like a fanfare that goes on for too long. It's aggravatingly simple and pointless. Seriously, what on earth possessed them to put this piece in here? They had enough already! White Light I actually do enjoy, even if it comes off sounding like the composer had no freaking clue what to write. Actually, I think that's why I like it. And sometimes when you're desperate, inspiration strikes and you end up writing something outside the lines of what's to be expected. There are other versions of White Light, but the orchestrated version is oddly the best. You'd think it'd make for good light rock and roll, and maybe it does, I don't know, but the orchestra version has much more character. The brass section has particular fun with one of the melodies, leading the way for strings and rolling percussion to enter with a certain amount of gusto. The whole thing sounds like the entrance music to a wrestler. I'm split on the Meaning of Birth piece. The live audience seems taken aback by the time it starts, but I don't know, that kind of feels scripted or put in with effects, or they put on an applause sign, I don't know. It begins sounding both whimsical and fragile, too much so that my stomach can't take it. The main theme has a very pop song feel to it. I actually do like it once it gets going in the piece. Most of it, the way the melody concludes feels too complacent, whereas the rest of it feels swift and riled up. The two just don't go together. But the piece is more enjoyable than not, so I'll give it a pass. Tales of Orchestra cashes in on quantity, and the quality, as far as its production and arrangements are concerned, is commendable. But that's because what you have is a concert that ultimately plays it safe, yet so safe it comes across as trying too hard. It doesn't have any wild card or ace up its sleeve, so it throws the deck at you instead, with up-tempo, percussive beat-driven medleys and adequate orchestral textures to fun, light songs. I was ready to give it a passing grade until I found out there's another piece sold as a digital exclusive. that piece is the Tales of Fantasia medley. Not only is it music from the first game, but it's also considered the best music from the entire franchise. Why? Why would you not put in your best bet? No! Extra money is not a good reason, because when you're missing the highlight on your CD, the average consumer isn't going to bother buying this roughly $30 product. They're going to say, screw it, I'll just buy the piece and the few others I want. Which means you end up making less money than what you intended because they didn't buy the stupid disc that you made. It doesn't make any sense. Are they just trying to convert people from plastic to digital? It's got to be the most pointless promotion. I mean, that just makes me even more angrier at the meaningless pieces that are on here. I mean, come on, it's music from the first game, and you're celebrating your anniversary with this orchestra. The freaking main character from the game is right on the cover. He's conducting it, and you leave it out? Bitter? I'm not bitter. Tales of Symphonia really should have been represented here a bit more, though. Not because it was one of the most successful in this series, but that I feel it to be one of the more interesting scores. Which is funny to say because I originally felt the score was forgettable. There really wasn't any single piece that stood out, but I soon realized that, as a whole, Symphonia's soundtrack was commendable. It's your classic, if not more rigorous, due to the score's size and hot and cold intrigue, of a whole greater than the sum of its parts. You have a lot of gentle, melodic pieces for the hamlets in the game, and plenty of moody, sacred music for certain dungeons. At times, especially for the music of the towns and overworlds, it comes across as folksy, like it wasn't a composer who wrote it, but the denizens of the game's fiction. And looking back, that really charmed me. I don't actually get that feeling with most other scores in any medium. Several tracks could have been combined into a suite or some sort of symphonic movement, but we didn't get it. The original score's use of simulated woodwinds, harpsichord, and simple melodies give it a Renaissance feel, only lighter and more at ease. Lloyd's theme is a great example of this. It's very sweet and caring, but the latter half reveals a kind of diligence and awareness. The harpsichord plays the accompaniment in a static, bouncy state. My favorite use of the harpsichord, why would you use it in any other way? And a flute plays the main part. It's really just a melody, but you could do all kinds of pretty things with it, I'm sure of it. I realize I'm going a bit off track here, but just to further drive the point home, I should also mention the music in Symphonia's Western intro, which is fantastic. It may not sound like it right away, the ending is kinda tacked on, but the first 40 seconds, primarily the music that plays right before the title appears, is gorgeous. Oh, what, you don't believe me? Okay, fine, and you know what? Let's just cross the line and listen to it right here and now, and tell me this shouldn't be played by the live orchestra it deserves. No, don't go away, come on, get this back, we're gonna talk about this right here, we're gonna discuss this like a family. It's a shame, because in moments like the beginning of the boss medley or Eternal Mind and White Light, you can sense something here. If there is a constant in a Tales narrative, it's the character's desire for a resolution that outweighs the world-scale conflicts, no matter how painful or pickle-plum difficult the situation gets. That may sound simple or cliché, but for Tales, that's where its thematic gravity lies, and you can only get so much out of that from the orchestrated songs. I'm still recommending the CD. I mean, you can have a lot of simple fun with it. There's nothing really complex here or of particular interest in terms of development or anything like that. Some pieces that have no business repeating do anyway, and some pieces that have no business being here are here anyway. Anyone hoping for something a little more ambitious, intimate, or colorful will be left wanting. If you're a Tales fan or still think you can enjoy what's there, I recommend it. Otherwise, I'd stay clear or look for it at a low price. 2.5 stars out of 5, and my MVP pick is, I don't know, Eternal Mind, maybe. Ah! This was Seth for the final note. Take it easy, everybody. Thanks for watching.